If you're listening to this episode, it's probably because you're thinking to yourself, I'm not quite sure that this is what I signed up for. When we decided to homeschool, or maybe go back further, decided to have a family, I had no idea this is what it would involve. This is where we would be. And homeschooling adds just a higher level. And it doesn't mean that it's something that is impossible, but as you look around and you see others who didn't add in the homeschooling, the home education, you might feel a little jealous. I know how you feel. I felt like that too. But today you're saying it's just all too much. I've got the homeschooling, I've got the motherhood, the discipleship, the discipline. Let's lean in and talk about this today. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where we talk anything and everything homeschool and all that encompasses the homeschool lifestyle. I'm your host, Leigh Nguyen. I'm a mom who never intended to homeschool, and suddenly I am here, 14 years later, with 2 homeschool graduates and 1 more to go. No matter where you are in your homeschool journey, Little by Little Homeschool seeks to empower and encourage you to carry out this amazing calling of home educating and discipling your children. It's not always easy, but I'm here to walk alongside you because I promise that these years are worth all of your effort. Grab that load of laundry that needs folded, settle in at the kitchen sink to wash those dishes, or tie up those walking sneakers, and let's get into today's topic. My goal today is to give you some hope, to bring you some peace, some joy, and definitely let's go back to that hope. I've been a mother for, we are just shy of 23 years. And I spent my school years in school. And so I had no idea what it took to run a household. I didn't know what the day in and day out of raising children was going to be. I mean, granted, I was one of those children, but I wasn't perceptive. I didn't understand at all. And so when we decided to have children, I was like, let's have kids. This will be so wonderful. Everything will be so perfect all the time, and they'll be just so easy. Yeah, that's not how it went. My firstborn was not an easy baby. And so I learned quickly that it wasn't going to be a smooth ride. And I learned quickly also that it was going to take a lot from me. I had no idea. And it's probably for the better, because maybe you're like me. And if I had actually known what it was going to take to raise children in the fear and admonition of the Lord and to seek to glorify Him and to do things intentionally and just that whole long list you have, I don't know if I would have gotten into it. But I think God keeps us a little bit blind to it so that we walk into it just thinking everything's going to be wonderful. And then we're just in too deep and we're like, okay, we got to do things. We have to actually pull this off. Today, I am going to be speaking from my mother's heart that has been through this, has had these thoughts many, many times, and just some ideas of what got me through to this other side. So like I said, I've got an almost 23-year-old, an almost 21-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And so I'm at this further end, and I feel like I'm in a sweet spot right now. It just feels a little easy, even though I have to remind myself and my husband, we're still parenting the 17-year-old. He's just as an older child. And so if you have a youngest, you'll realize that, like, wow, they just grow up more quickly. And like, oh, wait, I got to remember, we're still parenting him. But it's a sweet spot, and I'm going to share, how we got that too. So I have listed here like 6 different main ideas that I want to share with you. And the first is that you, homeschool mom friend, you are not alone in how you're feeling right now. In the overwhelm, in the exhausted, in the drowning, in the emotionally and possibly physically spent. You're probably like, I am all touched out. I am all talked out. I am just, I don't know. I don't know how I can keep doing this day in and day out because it just feels like too much. You feel like, remember the movie Groundhog Day? And you wake up and you're like, oh, we got to do this again. And in some seasons, it does feel like that, especially when you have little ones and there's just a constant need to take care of babies or toddlers and you're trying to keep them alive because they're surely going to go and run out into the road or something like that. And it's just you have to always be on. So just know that you are not alone. You have friends in the very same stages and seasons of life. You have friends that are maybe a little bit further down the road that have also felt this. And so just know that you're not alone. I felt very alone in my motherhood. When I became a mom, none of my friends were mothers, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. And I didn't have anybody to actually realize that what I'm going through is normal. I had my mom, she lived at a distance, and that's where I began to find some Christian motherhood books. And I would read through them like, oh, so I'm not alone in these feelings. You are not alone in these feelings. But I think we have to be careful to not get stuck in the misery loves company. We can even find, say, social media accounts, and this is what they talk about. And they kind of make a parody of all the craziness and the insaneness and just the all too much of parenting. And it's like, oh, I feel seen. And those can be fun and funny, but after a while, they can really bring us down and no longer help us to see the high calling of being a mother, of parenting the children that you have. And so we have to be really careful that we don't get stuck in talking to, say, just one friend or a group of friends, just always pointing out the negativity and always the downside. Misery does love company. It feels better to know that others are miserable and struggling as well. Don't get stuck there. It's okay to have conversations and real and raw and honest conversations with close friends and with your husband, but then end it with prayer. End it with, now, let's move on. What can we do to get out of this? Second thing I want to mention is that the God who called you will equip you. Not leaning into that is denying the work that he wants to do in you. He's not going to call you to something that you won't be able to do. You might not be able to do so. You might have some children that are small. You might not be able to do the teenage years right now. He's not fast forwarding you. You don't wake up the next day and all of a sudden you have 15 to 18-year-olds. No, you have 5 to 8-year-olds. And so he's like, no, I'm equipping you right now for this. That 15 to 18, you'll have this foundation because I'm going to equip you in this, that when you get to the 15 to 18, you'll be more equipped for it. So how does he equip you? He equips you by surrendering. He equips you by daily, hopefully daily if possible, reading the Bible in prayer and maybe listening to podcasts or sermons or reading some Christian homeschool books, most importantly, the Bible, but adding on to that, things that are going to help and encourage you and actually maybe give you some practical advice. That's also how he equips you. Maybe there is a podcast about homeschool that you listen to often, no, but maybe there's a social media account or a blog or a friend or a specific author that really gives you some great ideas. That is how he is giving you ideas through that person, equipping you for right now in this season. Sometimes you might learn things you can kind of put in your back pocket and you can use them later as your kids are older. But the God who has called you to motherhood and to homeschooling and falling under that category, the discipleship and the discipline and the heart work with your children will equip you. You need to rely upon him. You need to depend upon him. Third, it is hard to see right now. If you're listening to this episode and you completely related to this title, it is hard for you to see now, but seasons do end. I didn't see that when my kids were really young and when we were really in the thick of the homeschooling years, and there was always something. Somebody was always sick, or there was some type of catastrophe, some traumatic event, some type of math problem that was wrong. There was maybe arguing amongst them or something that came up, at church. There was just always something and multiple somethings at the same exact time. But this season, it will end. The season of you saying, I have no idea when the next time is, I'll get a full night of sleep. That season will end. So think back to past seasons of your life that have ended. Let's just take your relationship. I'm going to assume that you are married. And so think about the season of singleness. I have 3 singles. I mean, granted, the 17-year-old is still just 17, but we've been doing a singles dating and, a book we're kind of going through once in a while when everybody is home for dinner, just kind of reading half of a chapter at a time and just discussing it and stuff. So I'm deep in that right now with them. But you had a season of being single, and that ended when you began dating your husband or courting or whatever it is you want to call it. And that ended when you became engaged and you're preparing for marriage. That ended when you got married and you had a newlywed stage. So just know those stages, those seasons, they do end, but it can feel really long when you have kids, especially if maybe the age range is wider. You might feel like you're in it, but really what should happen is maybe you have a 10-year-old and you have a 1-year-old. Well, the 10-year-old isn't going to be as difficult as the 1-year-old. So you do have that wide range and you can also just come together as a family. And so it is different. But if you are especially in like that, you got, I don't know, we'll say 4 or 5 kids in 5 or 6 years, and they're all compact and maybe between baby and middle of elementary years. Like, that's a lot. It really is. Acknowledge that. But understand that season will end. And so when we realize that, I really feel like it helps us to lean into it. And it took me way too many years to see this. I see it very clearly right now in this season of life, and I started to really see it a couple of years ago. And I wish that someone had said something to me, or maybe somebody did, and it just didn't click. It really clicked a couple of years ago. And like I said, I feel like I'm in a sweet spot right now, and I am just relishing whatever time that I have with my kids. They're all home right now. Well, not at this moment, but they're all living at home. And I know that this season will end and it'll never come back. Oh, I'm going to start to cry again. I don't think I've cried on the podcast in a while, but the season you're in right now, it will end and it won't come back. So lean into it and remember that God will equip you. 4th, your heart posture. This builds upon the 3rd thing I just mentioned. Your heart posture really determines the outcome. If you're bitter and you're angry, the outcome is going to be more bitterness and more anger. If your heart posture is towards seeking peace in your home and having a hopeful heart posture and a one of surrender, that's what it's going to lead to. And so we have to decide, what is that going to be? And the Holy Spirit will equip you. When I just have remembered such specific times when I was like, okay, I am not thinking about this right. My heart is not in the right place. And so when I decided my heart needs to be in a better place for this, then my mind and my thought and my words, my actions began to then follow suit as the Holy Spirit empowered me to do so. I would go back and remember saying, okay, I'm drawing a line in the sand and I'm not going back. I have to decide right now, this is what I'm going to have as my heart posture moving forward. I can only do so much about a situation. And so the only thing I can do is what I can do. I can't do anything about the other person. And when it comes to kids and parenting and homeschooling them, it's our heart posture. Are you really triggered and frustrated all the time with school? Just one little thing that doesn't go according to plan just sets you off. What's our heart posture that we have to go back to? Number 5, you get to decide what is important for your family, for your homeschool, in your motherhood, how you disciple your children, how you reach their hearts, and how you will discipline them. And you get to decide overall what's important right now, what's important to spend your time on, and then what is not important. Sometimes, well, oftentimes, maybe many times, and this might be what you need to hear, is that you have to reduce the amount of yeses to bring down your overwhelm. There were seasons where I remember I was like, oh, yes, I can add this and I can add this. And it just became too overwhelming. I was like, I have to let some things go. And maybe people were disappointed at first, but then they would have to get over it. There were multiple times where I would run a women's ministry and I would do it for a couple years. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Something has to give. And I would then step away from that. And there was always going to be women who would say, oh, I'm so sorry that you don't do them. I'm so sad. I wish you did this. And I was like, it just doesn't fit right now. And you have to decide that their uncomfortableness, their sadness, their, wishing that you hadn't have said no, doesn't mean that you have to say yes. Don't be a people pleaser. I tend towards being a people pleaser, and I know that. So I have to kind of check myself. But you have to decide what is important right now. Is the co-ops, is that what's important? Then keep at it. And maybe the sports have to go. Maybe the sports is important and the co-ops have to go. You have to decide what's important, talk to your husband, and then it's okay to reduce the amount of yeses that you have. So you can bring down the overwhelm in this season. Remember, this season will end, the next season will come, and you might be able to add those things back in. Number 6, tell yourself that right now, these years, that it just feels like it's all too much. There's just always something, always somebody that needs you. Needs attention, needs something done, or needs correction. The house needs to be picked up and cleaned up. Meals need to be made. Lessons need to be given. But these years right now, they're foundational. They are the foundation. And even though they're hard, they're the foundation that's going to make the later years, I'm going to put in air quotes, easier compared to all that it takes from you right now to get everybody moving along in the day, and at the end of the day, get everybody into bed. takes a lot compared to what it takes me now. I don't have to get anybody up. Everybody gets themselves up. They can get their own breakfasts. They can get themselves dressed. They can get into their own vehicles and drive to work or to drive to a class, or they can do all the things that they need to do. And I understand my role right now in this season and being that support role and providing that right now, that home base for them. But the foundational years made it so that this right now for me is easier. There is hard in it right now. Part of hard for me is knowing when to zip my lips and not say anything and just listen. When I just want to talk too much, especially to my boys, they start to shut down. Boys start to shut down a bit more. They're like, oh, okay, here she goes, wah, wah, wah. But just know that the hard right now, the discipleship that you're doing and noticing maybe an area of concern, maybe your child is lying a lot and you're saying, okay, we really need to address this. Yes, address it. Or you might find yourself with a teen that is a liar. Doesn't mean they're not going to lie to you as a teen, but hopefully maybe they don't. And hopefully if they do, it's very rare and you catch them in that. And then there's appropriate ramifications for that. But just these years right now are foundational for what's to come in the years ahead. And you want to have a good relationship with your kids in the teen years and the young adult years and the years that they are adults and they have their own families. I know that's what you want. Right now, the hard that just feels all too much to you is laying that foundation. It is worth it. I do have a podcast episode going back, probably when I first started, about this type of thing. And I'm going to drop that for you in the show notes about how that foundation, I think it's really important to understand that and to know how to lay that foundation for the future relationships. If you're struggling in your homeschool and you're like, I want to get it streamlined, I want to really know what we're doing and be intentional and focused, that's where your homeschool blueprint is going to come into play. I want to encourage you to go check that out at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint so that you can say, you know what, homeschool's not too much. Now we can just focus on figuring out how to make everything else not so much. Friend, you are doing a good job. What you are doing is worthy of your time and your effort, and God is pleased. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If it was just what you needed to hear, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? And if you would like to connect more, social media links and more are in the show notes just for you. I promise to see you back here real soon.